Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this sixth episode of the Candidate Experience. My name is Yannick. I am the co founder of Video Jobs, and today I am having the pleasure to welcome Andras Lacko.
Hi everyone, I'm Andras Lacko. I'm CEO and co-founder of the Grid Company. And thank you, Yannick, for having me for this great discussion and looking forward to sharing some insights with you.
Thank you so much for being here. So, first of all, we at Video Jobs, we talk to companies and we guide them into all the media production for employer branding and in order to present themselves on job boards. But through our careers and the people we have met, we had the chance to see people who wanted to make things different and yeah, change a bit the status quo. And Andras is definitely one of those. And so that's why I really wanted to talk about the topic that is touching all of us and where you are a specialist in it. So thank you so much for shaping also this episode with me. And before we kick off, maybe you can give us some background, explain us a bit what you did and how you landed here.
Yes, thanks for pointing out that there are people out there trying to shape the world and do things better or different. This is definitely what we're trying to do with the Grid Company, which is essentially a recruitment company. We're focalizing on or focusing on startups, scale ups, and high growth companies, and in their very practical roles, those pivotal roles, including marketing, sales, those roles where they quickly need to grow and need a lot of people. We have one motto is just fostering growth one hire at a time. And it's our little attempt to try to make the recruitment world a better place. And about me in a nutshell, I am a Hungarian and Swiss citizen, grew up in the French part of Switzerland, in Lausanne, where I did all my studies, including the École Hôtelière de Lausanne, which probably led me to love traveling and the whole hospitality industry. But is also probably the reason why I became an entrepreneur. Right after graduation, I had a fairly eclectic career path initially, different industries, very different corporations working at different countries in the world. And in 2018, I decided, all right, time to do my own thing. I first founded an art gallery for emerging artists. And then during COVID, the Gridco came along as an opportunity. And having had many recruitment experiences, I always felt that, there is something we can do better there. So it was the time and the moment to try and shape something different.
Okay, yes, so many things you have lived. I mean, so exciting also. I mean, you did not stop at one thing, and I think it's also the chance we have and the opportunities we have now compared to maybe 10, 15 years ago, where it felt like we just had to take the highway and just never go right. So it's great that you could say that this opportunity. Now, as you know, we are at the candidate experience. You also have been a candidate one day. How was your experience?
How many times have I been a candidate? Very eclectic, just my just like my career path. I had very good experiences, but I have to be honest, I had many uncomfortable to very bad experiences. And I think it's a combination of things, right? When I graduated in 2008, it was also an economical downturn, so it was hard for everyone to find a job. But ultimately, I don't know how, by fate or by other reason, I had the uncanny ability to find a job when the candidate market was terrible and not finding one when it was very good. So this also led me to think, why am I like this? And why are there other people like me? And what is the reason behind why are candidates not coming through in those markets, right? And I don't think there is such thing as something general in the recruitment, like general processes that we can apply. It's very different for many reasons, geographic reasons or cultural reasons or size of the company. Obviously, the larger the company, the more layers, the more processes you have. The smaller the company, the more authentic it is. But maybe one example to illustrate that is Switzerland itself as a country is very interesting, right? We have four language regions, and we have pretty much 3 to 4 mentalities
Sure.
also, right? And while in the French part, you can simply apply and find a job without having a picture on your resume, in the German part, if they ask you for a complete dossier, if your picture is not in there, it's considered incomplete. And that can already put you in a box or in a pile where you are already selected in a way, right? So it brings some kind of bias which shouldn't be there. And that's also a reason why we believe at the Grid Company that we can do much better.
Okay, so you really accompany company for the full cycle, for everything from right, having a new position until the person is onboarding, and
Correct.
even a
From
few
even
days
the
in.
moment when you consider and you say, okay, we need to hire that workforce planning part, which is crucial when you try to understand why you're hiring, what you're hiring, right? So we're with our clients right there, taking them by the hands. We usually consider ourselves as sparring partners.
Okay, nice. So now, if we move to our topic of the day, Gen Z against versus baby boomers. So maybe you can bring us some context.
Yes, very happy to bring a bit of context here. I think this is one of the greatest topics, burning topics right now, a very interesting topic also. We could talk about this for hours, but just to give a bit of context, baby boomers are people born between 64 and, depending on how we shape it, 20 years later, right? So early 80s. Um, but these are the people that are now going out of the job market. And then there are 2 generations in between, and Generation Z, which is a workforce hitting the job market right now. And the world has changed. It is as it is, right? But if we look at our grandparents when we were kids, how they looked, how they profiled a grandparent person. Well, baby boomers are today grandparents, right? And they look nothing like the grandparents of our grandparent time. That only to illustrate that, again, we have gone through many changes, technology, COVID, of course. But essentially, the big difference between these two is how they see the world and what their prerogatives are, right? What their meanings of the world are. Baby boomers had to build up the world again. So these are the post war people who really had to shape everything again. For Gen Z, it's a lot easier because everything is out there. But we are with Gen Z also at a turning point. This generational turning point happens pretty much every 20, 25 years. But the world has accelerated, and these changes happen a lot more frequently as well. I always like to say that Generation Y, the previous generation, pretty much our generation, has really initiated this. It's Generation Y also in the sense of YWHY, right? Why we're questioning also, why are we working like that? Why are we killing ourselves at work for so many hours? What are we doing with that? What are we doing with our lives? There is work, there's private life, there's so many things around. And we pretty much opened the door for Gen Z to really bring the matter on the table that they fight for work-life balance. Not to say that they're not interested about career path, not to say that they're not interested about working up the corporate ladder. They are, and they're very much aware of it. They're very also much aware of the value that they bring to the market, maybe something where we failed at a little bit, right? And compared to baby boomers, well, they were just working to offer themselves a better retirement life.
Mm.
And there are so many cases where, unfortunately, they work very hard, then comes retirement. And it's also a very critical moment in life where you stop working. Is your life ending there? Where is your purpose? So many people cannot cooperate with that. And many people even pass away way too early and could not even enjoy their retirement. So, this is probably the aspect that changed along the entire way. But I hate to define these different groups into stereotypes, right? It's
I
not
understand.
about the different stereotypes. It's essentially today about understanding how we can bring all these generations together so that they cooperate a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's exactly as you say. I mean, when I think about the baby boomers, people are hardworking, really like doing everything to build the world we have today. How is the work ethic between those two generations, between baby boomer and Gen Z? I mean, you could define quite much the baby boomers, but towards the Gen Z.
We tend to believe that they're very different, and surprisingly, they're very similar. So the work ethic is very similar but very different. Again, let's put them back into context. So baby boomers building up the post-war world where they are pretty much building businesses up from scratch, right? Gen Z is also maybe defined by a generation of many entrepreneurs. So they also have this motivation of building up something from scratch. The opportunities are a lot different. Gen Z have a lot more opportunities to build something, to to really make something on their own, right? There's a little bit less risks. If we look at the whole startup world and the startup ecosystem, right? There are investors, there are different companies that help them build their companies. It doesn't cost as much today to open a company that it costed before. So I think the opportunities that Gen Z have is a lot more than what baby boomers used to have. In terms of work ethic, they're also very hardworking. But what defines them maybe the most is the purpose. They work for a purpose and with the purpose. And if the purpose is not there, it's pretty much empty. So they don't strive if the purpose is there, and that purpose can also shift and change for many external reasons. For example, what we need to be very aware of is that their span of attention is also a lot shorter. Right? We could blame it on technology and these things, but I think it's also quite positive because it brings changes a lot faster. They shake up the status quo. They challenge the status quo. So if something is not right, they address it immediately. And I think this is where companies need to understand that if they raise an issue, it should be dealt with now. Otherwise, you lose your candidate. If it's in a recruitment process, right?
Mhm.
What also maybe defines them as opposed to baby boomers, our generation, and the previous generation, Generation X, is that if we look at recruitment, at interviews, they have turned the tables. It's no longer, I'm the candidate, I'm sitting here, I need to prove myself to the company that I'm the right fit. They're going to challenge the company. Why are you the good company for me? What do you believe in as a company? What are your values? And they can literally pretty much stop a conversation right there, stand up and leave if they feel that it's not genuine or if they feel that it's not what they expected. So, this is also something, the message and how we communicate the message, our purpose, our values is also critical today.
I understand, yeah, and I heard, I don't know exactly the statistic, but many times they say, okay, when a Gen Z go have a look at a company, they go check on first on the website for sure, but also on different social media, just to get to know what's behind and if it fits a bit their worldview.
Yeah, very much. I mean, they strip down the companies where they apply, right? Baby boomers did not really have the chance to do it because a lot of companies did not exist, so they had to build it up. The way we were doing our homework about checking the companies, essentially going on their website or and not more. But today we have multiple platforms to be able to see how they vehiculate their values, what do they do, how genuine it is, and they maybe also what defines Gen Z is that they hold stakeholders and shareholders accountable. So, for example, they see something on a social media, they ask about it. They ask about why did you do that, right? If they're communicating some numbers or some kind of things, how did you come up with those numbers? And they want to understand. They challenge. They challenge a lot.
Yeah, so now we are talking about exactly communication and exactly those points. And so, how do they communicate together? Because Gen Z and baby boomers, totally different ways. I mean, some people like being in a room together and feel like you can do so much, and where other generation, for some of them, it's not important at all. Where can they find also that?
That's probably one of the biggest areas where they differ. Baby boomers are still used to newspapers, reading a lot of things, right? Reading full texts to grasp and make their own opinions or understand what's going on. They also rely on TV news channels to get the information. And they did not have all the options that Gen Z has, right? Gen Z's, again, span of attention is a lot shorter. So they're less about reading long articles. They are about a lot more about fact checking, right? Is they don't need that much information, but the information that they receive that needs to be very accurate because they can find if it's accurate or not. And also another difference is that they have multiple channels where they can access that information. So if there's a discrepancy between the channels, they'll spot it immediately. And as I said, they're also maybe a bit more visual as opposed to the baby boomers. So if you feed them with long text information, it will not interest them, right? It's not going to be that exciting for them. So you need to catch and grasp their attention in a very visual manner.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a challenge, I believe. Yeah. So, and but now, I mean, you can kind of grasp their attention and getting them to be interested maybe in your company and as you are. Now, they arrive at the company, and it's probably sometimes, you enter in a company where there are lots of people, baby boomers and also other generation, they work a certain style, and maybe technology has not arrived or maybe not so far. So how could they find themselves from a technology level? How can they communicate or maybe find ways to collaborate on it?
Baby boomers have pretty much created the technology that we have out today, right? And fine tuned by the next generations. So they're the ones who build the computers. They're the one who built the World Wide Web. They're the ones who built and created the emails and all those things. So essentially, they know how it works, but they're not. They gently, slowly put it into practice, right? Um, Again, I'm not a fan of trying to categorize people and so on, but they learned along the way, and they some of them are very techy now. So there are some baby boomers that I can learn a lot from in terms of technology on how to use my iPhone or some kind of things because they know a lot more than I do. But because they are interested about it, they find it extremely interesting, and they have seen the change from mid 90s to now, right? They have gone through the change. Gen Z, it was all here for them. They were born with it. They took their first breath with technology. So uh, they're a lot more tech savvy. They're digital natives, as we call them, right? So it's in their blood. They can relate to it very much. Um, Baby boomers and the two following generations up to our generations, we had to learn how to use it. We had to learn also in the professional corporate world how to use it, right? Phones, cordless phones, fax machines. I mean,
We had to use it.
explain what a fax machine is to a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha, they'll laugh at you. But maybe a good example to illustrate the difference between them. The Italian TV or some Italian company brought together some Gen Z kids when they were still kids. And they presented them with very old phones, like really dial phones where you would need to, that round dial that you would, right? Our grandparents' phone. And they asked them about it, what they think about those phones. And the answer of one of those kids is just fabulous. It said, it looks nice, but it's not very convenient. So, and I think it illustrates everything, right? It's for them, it's all about convenience as well in the communication. They don't, you don't need to explain it to them,
Yeah.
and they are used to it. I think this is the biggest difference. And while baby boomers have learned to embrace it, they're probably not bringing it to the next level, and Gen Z is bringing it to the next level, right? I mean, right now we're recruiting on TikTok, on Instagram or Facebook or whichever, to name just a few. It's insane. Who would have thought?
Yeah. And it's necessary because it's only sometimes the only place where you can start the conversation. Yeah. Sure. I mean, now, okay, we are again in the workplace and we have this younger and older generation. And how is it with leaderships, teams, hierarchy? How does it work? How can it work?
I think this is also an area where we expect them to be very different, but actually not that much. In terms of leadership, hierarchy, I mean, baby boomers are used to this very strong hierarchy in the workplace, the different roles, the titles, and all this. I don't want to say it's not that important or less important for Gen Z, because it is important for them. But the difference is they don't define themselves by work, right? Work is not the person. Um, Gen Z, of course, is more in favor of a more open leadership style, right? More flat hierarchies, a more social aspect to the workplace where you can discuss. There are also a lot more feedback culture oriented, right? But genuine feedback, because baby boomers are a little bit more in the feedback culture. Okay, my managers, my boss says that, I'm not challenging that, right? Because I want to hold my position, I don't want to get fired. Where Gen Z goes much further, they ask those questions, the ones that disturb, and they're not afraid of holding a conversation. The problem, I think, in leadership is probably between our generation and Gen Z. There is the biggest discrepancy, right? We're still somewhat accustomed and used to this hierarchies and
Sure.
so on, right? And but we're also the ones who kind of initiated this change that materialized with Gen Z, right? So it's a little bit our fault. But I think we're the ones where, again, just an example, a person who is working at the airport, just my age, who is in a manager's position, a young person has entered the team in a client facing role. The person woke up late, came with the hair not done, really messy hair. And they had to have a conversation about your frontline to customers. The way you look reflects a lot. It reflects a lot, not about you only, but about the company that you represent. So they had to go through a long conversation about the person, the company, the message it vehiculates. And the conversation was blank because the younger person did not want to understand or did not understand how important that is.
Okay.
So the conversation was, maybe my hair is messy, but my qualifications are not. It's
Yeah, I'm
just because
here.
my hair is messy that I'm going to do my work in a different way. And so, again, this is sometimes maybe a difference, but I think it hits more our generation with the next generation. where we have these kind of conversations. Again, it's not the same with everyone, right?
No.
And it does not define each generation. But I think the communication issues or challenges that we are having is between Gen Z and us, and
Mhm.
it's pretty much fairly similar between baby boomers and Gen Z. And the whole aspect to relate to hierarchies actually a lot more similar between them.
Okay, and so now, I mean, those people, and exactly with the example you brought. So how does it change that in a team? Because those people have to work together on a daily basis. I mean, they are not only the boss, which is probably a baby boomer, and the latest trainee, which is a Gen Z, but you have some people who are now, I don't know, 20-ish years old, with people that are 60 or 50. So how do they work together, or how can they find like kind of a place where they can talk together?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the challenge that everyone has, or a lot of companies are having. But again, rather than trying to define who is who and who is what, I think we should look at the perspective of um, what is the strength of each generation. Yeah, what are they good at, or what are their weaknesses? What do they do not have in comparison to the other generations, and try to bridge the generations on those levels. Again, if we bring together Gen Z with baby boomers, I am a huge advocate for reverse mentoring, meaning Gen Z helping or working together with baby boomers, teaching them the technology, teaching them how the world runs today. But on the other hand, they learn a lot because they have an utmost respect for baby boomers. They know what baby boomers have built for them. They know that without them, they would not be here today. So they have a very strong respect for them. But both generations can teach each other a lot. But we should really address this from a perspective of what are the strengths of each generation or person, and what are the weaknesses, and how we can bridge those. And I think our generation, Generation Y, and Generation X, who is also pretty much closer to the retirement, but we should find the bridges on those levels because we are the hyphens between both of them, right? You and I are pretty much hybrids,
Mhm.
right?
Sure.
So we understand the motives of baby boomers and previous generations, but we also live and understand the motives of Gen Z. So we are at the heart of it.
Sure. No, totally. I believe that all of our generation in between can really make a change and also help this change and also help this communication for
Mm.
sure. I understand. So we talk a lot about work-life balance. I mean, I think the first thing I've heard about Gen Z is they prioritize work-life balance. I think it was my first contact with this term was like, okay, now the work, I mean, is something, but probably the friends are even much more important. So what would you like to say about that?
I mean, it's probably if you ask anyone on the street what you think about Gen Z, that's the first thing they would say. It's a reality, and we have initiated this again, and they have brought it to the next level. So a lot of the opportunities that we have today to live our work-life balance is thanks to the Gen Z because again they have challenged the status quo. Uh, but there's a lot of misconception behind work-life balance. So usually people tend to understand that okay, they want to be digital nomads, right? They want to work for South Africa this month, from Tokyo next month, or whatever. um, there is also a misconception of they're not that interested into the work world,
Itself.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
that they're just doing it because it pays a salary, and then they use that money to enjoy and live their lives. It's it's a bit of a hocus pocus. It's not true. They are very much aware of what work is, of the value of work. They're just trying to balance and make sure that it serves a purpose, right? If they land a job, they want to have a fair salary for the job that they do. They're very conscious about if I'm working 80%, and how many Gen Z are trying to fight and work only 80% and have more time for private stuff to live this work life balance, but they also are very aware of their value during those 80%. They will not compromise for less. While previous generations might have, they will not. They're very much aware of the value that they bring to a company, but they also understand that it's a two-way street. And if it's no longer a two-way street, that is probably also a huge difference. They'll make a change immediately. As I mentioned before, in a recruitment process today, the biggest difference with previous generations and a term that was not there before is candidate engagement. Today, if you are not behind your candidates, you'll lose them and they'll go work for someone else. You cannot simply say to a candidate, listen, we'll have an interview next week. You do the interview and then just let your candidate stay there and not inform the candidate. If the candidate is waiting too long, and this is hard to understand, what is considered too long, right? This is where this is a huge challenge. But if you wait too long, you lose it. You lose the candidate. If again we talked about the different platforms and that we have today, right? If a company, for example, in the line of diversity and inclusion, has for years posted very actively about it. Again, I don't want to go into the different isms, right? We know today what diversity and inclusion is. We can think about the different isms, but it's not what I think diversity and inclusion is. But if all I wanted to say is that if something changes in the art of the communication, if suddenly they stop posting or communicating about something, and if that something is of an essential value to the candidate, to a Gen Z candidate, the Gen Z candidate will ask about why did you stop communicating about this, or why did you stop communicating numbers about diversity and inclusion, or any change. If they feel that the answer is not genuine, they can stop the process right there. So today you have much more opportunities to lose a candidate who is a Gen Z candidate because your communication or because what you do is not genuine, or simply they use the word respect, right? So if you are in a recruitment process and you have an interview today, if within 3, 4, 5 days you don't have an answer and you don't have any information, it's called disrespectful. Why is it called disrespectful by Gen Z? Is because it means you're not valuing my time. I am putting my time into the recruitment process. You are the company who wants me. Yes, I am looking for a job, it's true, or I need a job, it's true, but we initiated a conversation. So you consider the fact that you might need me. Well, show me that you need me.
It's totally different from what we did. I mean, for us, it was like so clear. I mean, if I talk about a few years back, it was normal to write like 50 motivation letter and to spend like 1 or 2 hours just to prepare for just one discussion, and then just maybe not getting an answer, or yeah, maybe just getting a no, and that was enough for us. Where probably Gen Z is not exactly the same.
They want to understand the why behind, and again, they do challenge the status quo, right? If you apply to a very large international organization today, chances are they're working with a heavily structured ATS system where even when you upload your CV as a PDF, you still need to fill out all the fields because it's not taking it over properly. Well, Gen Z people, if they see that, they'll stop the process right there. They don't have 3 hours to fill out an application, right? It needs to go fast, just as social media, just as the rest of their lives. It needs to go fast. This is why we are hiring through social media, video hiring, and all that. So they will not sit down 3 hours to prepare a candidacy for that. And you said the dinosaur thing, the motivational letter, right?
Yeah.
They even consider, why should I write my motivation on a piece of paper when you can invite me for a conversation and we can discuss my motivation, right? I mean, we all know what a motivation letter is. Ultimately, I am motivated to work for this job at this company for this reason. I'm the best, and the rest, right? But they'll all write the same. So they do question, why do we need a motivational letter today? We maybe also questioned it, but we had to play along.
Yeah, totally.
Otherwise, we wouldn't find a job.
Yeah, it was kind of like the way, and we just accepted it without really asking more, even the Gen Y. But now, so now maybe going towards loyalty to an employer. I mean, you touch this subject, and you say, I mean, it's quite different the way they would stay in a job or how long. How does it work?
I purposely did not mention it until now, but also something that defines Gen Z is job hopping, right? Our generation, if we would change, so let's say people who hit the job market early 2000s or even before, if we would change jobs every 2 to 3 years and be job hopping, it would be very negative when you're looking for a job, right? Because instantly the companies would ask themselves, why can this person not stay longer than 2 to 3 years in the company? What's not okay with that person? So instantly you're categorized and potentially something wrong with you. Today, it's no longer an issue of job hopping, right? Probably depends a little bit on the industry. There are industries where it is still an issue, a problem, versus in other industries. It's actually even better because it means that you were able to collect very different experiences, compare those experiences, and the learning curve is a lot stronger. So you know better. Exactly, and you bring a lot more skills also to the table, and a stronger candidate. So job hopping is also something that can define Gen Z. Now it goes together with loyalty, right? So we are asking ourselves, if Gen Z people stay no longer than 2 to 3 years, they're not loyal to their employers. But if we check at all the things that happen in 2 3 years today compared to 2 3 years 20 years ago, it's also insane, right? A lot more things happen today in those 2 3 years. So this is also why it's quite normal that Gen Z people change jobs or hop jobs a lot more than we do. But it's also because they have the opportunity, and the world gives them this opportunity as well to do it. Now, their loyalty is also very different in the sense that if they start working for a company with whom they share values, it's very important that they stay aligned with these values during their entire stay within that company.
Yeah.
If they start to notice that something's changing or something's not right, they won't hesitate to quit and go somewhere else. Maybe this is also something that can define Gen Z, is that they do not hesitate to change.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
would
It will think
today
twice,
no
yeah.
longer, but you
Yeah.
and I, in our first two jobs, we did consider quitting the job after 2 years. And anybody you would ask, when you would ask, are like, try to stay a little longer just for your resume and for your opportunities, right? Well, that's no longer the case today. It's also because many of them collect these experiences, and then a lot of them become entrepreneurs and then shape their own thing. But even in entrepreneurship, they switch and change a lot more frequently, drop things. They're more about try and error, and they are not afraid to fail. They embrace failure. That's maybe also a big difference. They embrace failure much more than we did or we could.
Yeah, very interesting. But now time is passing by. Uh, what would be probably the best recommendation you will say to an employer that is facing those different generation, and how can they bring those people together? Maybe to kind of sum up what you brought to the conversation and how interesting it was.
Again, there are a lot of messages here, but I think we should consider baby boomers and keeping them a lot longer in the company, right? These are people that are still very active and want to be very active. Not all of them, right? But there's a great portion of them who still want to be active in the work, in the corporate world, and we should give them a chance. Unfortunately, too many countries or too many regulations, laws in the country prevent from doing it, and we are forced to send them to retirement. But there was this movie, the internship with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro. Very light comedy, but ultimately sends a very strong message that a retired person becomes an intern in a company, and ultimately brings a lot to the CEO of the company, who is pretty much a Gen Y person. But um, it really illustrates where the crossroads, where we are standing today. We should look at opportunities to keep these people in the workplace for many reasons. And one reason is also for Gen Z to learn a lot more and to be able to put reverse mentoring programs initiative in place. I do believe that both generations can communicate very easily with each other, and it serves all other generations.
Mm.
And if we can bridge them,
Yeah.
it really, domino effect hits all of the other generations, because all generations after baby boomers respect the ancients, so
Yeah.
to called, right?
Yeah.
But we have that utmost respect. And that is a base which allows us to build upon. So reverse mentoring is something that I would really highly recommend that we put in place. Again, try to see how we can integrate or reintegrate or keep the baby boomers in the workplace, because it can be a beautiful thing for the future and make the world a better place.
Yeah, definitely very, I mean, inspiring and also engaging for the Gen Z. I believe that if you try to do also something for them and also engaging them, also to keep them probably longer or more invested in their daily task. So now,
You mentioned the engagement. Maybe quickly, one thing there. Um, this is also something we should be very aware of when we hire or recruit Gen Z people, is that we need to keep them engaged during the entire process, right? I already mentioned this, but it essentially means that recruitment has become a far more marketing type of activity, right? You need to seduce those people. You need to build personas of your candidate. You need to understand where your candidates are, depending on the industry or the job level. The candidates are not at the same place or not on the same platforms. So that's also something that we need to be very aware of, is to align the message to the role or to the industry or to the platforms that we are using. You cannot communicate the same way on LinkedIn than you communicate on TikTok or Instagram, right? So this is also something that a lot of companies are, of course, already doing, but we need to do a lot more, and engagement is the key.
yeah, yeah, no, definitely, and I mean it's quite fun because I talked to a young guy, 20 years old, and I we were running some ads for some jobs, and I was like, he said, "Yeah, I've never heard about this company and about this position and so on," and I was like, "Yeah, but how could I have reached you?" And it was like, "Yeah, I try to spend as less time as possible on my phone." Directly in the morning, and I'm reading the newspaper sometime. I was like, okay, so this is the way I would have been able to reach you. I mean, it's quite crazy. I would never have expected that because we were on social media and trying everything to reach. And actually, if I would have placed this ad in the newspaper, it was like, yeah, I don't want to spend too much time since the morning on my phone, so I just wanted to.
Well, ask him the question in 2 months again. Maybe the answer is different.
Yeah, we'll see. But so now, talking about the candidate experience, how do you see it moving forward, taking into consideration that the Gen Z will be like a large part of the workforce? And how do you see them really like entering this market and making probably all those things a bit simpler, like they like?
It's a good question. I think the big challenge on the candidate side is today, right? Because today we are hiring them in junior positions. Okay, maybe the older ones, the very first Gen Z people that are nearing 30, being 30 years old, they might have some responsibilities and managerial positions, but most of them are still in junior roles. So we are hiring the managers of tomorrow. So the biggest challenge is now hiring these people. When Gen Z is going to represent the largest part of the workforce, when they'll be the managers, directors, it's going to be a lot different because they're hiring the same generation, right? So a lot of things will be easier, I would say, in 5 to 10 years from now, or 5 to 7 years from now. But let's not underestimate that. And I also think that maybe the job hopping and the 2 3 year thing within a company might change also within the next decade, because again they'll be in more senior positions where you need the time in the company, where you need the time to build the experience, to build your own team, to be responsible for that. They'll be somehow the victims of the younger Gen Z who will be job hopping, right? So they'll discover what we are doing right now and the challenges that we are having right now. And I think it might stabilize and normalize a little bit there. And we are already talking about Gen Alpha, which is the one after Gen Z. I have the impression that it's going to be also, again, a very disruptive generation. So Gen Z today should already start to try and understand what defines Gen Alpha so that they don't make the mistakes that we make today with them, and try to understand already how those kids live today, because it defines the adults they'll be tomorrow. And but the challenge is now today to recruit those future managers, right? And again, understand who they are, build a persona of who they are, understand where they are, and adapt your communication. And by adapting your communication, you also need to be aware that you need to adapt your communication and the art and the style of communication a lot faster, iterate within the same process, right? We need to be a lot more flexible than we were before.
Yeah, I think those are really great words, and also, yeah, it really rings a bell for me because it's really, I mean, but what you say is really this world is evolving so fast. I mean, I feel like it was like kind of still until now somehow, and now that. I mean, every in 2 years, doing what we are maybe doing now can be totally obsolete. So it's really interesting to see how fast it goes, and also it gives the opportunity to everyone to probably change jobs but also specialize in things that I mean, like AI we are talking about now. I mean, you cannot be yeah, you can maybe be someone that is working in AI for 5 or 10 years or even longer, but I mean the most jobs are created around now, so the people have to quickly adapt in order to understand what's behind.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think the world operates very much as a startup, right? So it's very quick, it's very fast, it's a lot of changes, and maybe the larger corporations are a bit reluctant to adapt to the change that quickly, although they're doing what they need to do and they're doing a good job at it, but it takes obviously a lot more time for them to implement those things. So maybe another thing that we should do, especially in the recruitment area or for the candidates, is try for larger corporations to work with startups,
Mm.
because it's pretty much a little bit Gen Z against baby boomers, so David against Goliath. But again, it's two separate worlds. But if they would try to collaborate together, I think it would make the entire candidate experience a lot more interesting, because recruiting in startups goes very fast, right? Let's say you just landed, I don't know, 20 million in a round of investment, which is an insane amount of money. But a lot of it will be spent within the next 12 to 18 months. And the first area where you spend it is recruitment, because you need to build your teams. Essentially, you're growing from 5 to 20, 25 or more employees. This is something that those large corporations have already done. They have the experience, they know how to do it. This is an area where they can learn. Um, but in startup world, we hire a lot of Gen Z people, right? But it matches also the ecosystem. So that's why it functions. And as soon as it does not match the ecosystem, that's where it gets complicated. So really trying to understand what the companies look like, what the candidates are, bridge those things, and ultimately be ready to iterate and change frequently.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting, very inspiring. I mean, I think yeah, that's the future that is ahead of us for sure, and we will need to adapt. Andras, thank you so much for being my first guest in the office in the studio, being able to test that with all the challenges we have. But I think it was a great interview. Thank you for taking so much time and being so interested. I think in humans in the end and in people themselves and what they do good and what the difference are between all of us. But in the end, we are all humans and trying to make this world better. So thank you for being my guest.
Yannick, thank you very much for hosting me in your studio. Great studio, by the way. So good job here. And yeah, I mean, you heard it. I could talk about this for hours, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this angle from diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Andras. And on our side, from the candidate experience, we will be having Diane Fremont, and we will talk about data driven HR in the next episode of the candidate experience. So, thank you very much for joining us. Please don't hesitate to keep commenting, getting in touch with Andras if you have some specific question. All around recruiting. He's the right guy. He knows what he's talking about. So please just get in touch. I think he will be more than happy to answer you and talk to you. So on this note, I think we will wrap it up and I wish you a very nice afternoon.
Have a good afternoon.